Hey, everybody. I am with Max Harwood today, and we interviewed a few years ago, but he has had a lot happen in the short period of time, these last couple years. And you have moved from, where did you move from and where did you move to?
Well, I used to live close to Vancouver, British Columbia, but in a sort of suburb or separate city called Langley, even though my service area with Augusta is in Burnaby. And then we moved over to a province called Saskatchewan, which is the least populated province in Canada. I think there's least or less populated territories, which are like even further north. But in terms of the actual provinces, Saskatchewan's only got about 1 million people. And in the city we live, it's called Saskatoon, and there's about 300,000. So roughly a third of the entire province lives in our city.
So, why in the world did you move there? Did you start another location? Do you still have an Augusta location? What's this all about?
Yeah, so the Augusta location is still active and running. I believe that with small businesses, they are cash flowing assets. They generally
Mhm.
don't sell for very much money, and so it's best to retain. I also heard from someone somewhere at some point that rich people sell and wealthy people retain. The wealthy
Mhm.
people being the ones that have more capital, and so I
Mhm.
thought it actually does make sense. And I've seen other people in my life or just in my own life as well, looking back on maybe smaller decisions where I've sold something and in retrospect, it would have probably been better to retain it. And
Mhm.
so that's the opinion I have with businesses or real estate, just to hold on to it for the long term, because generally it's going to go up in value. So we retained that business in Burnaby, but we moved because my wife and I have 3 children. We were renting a basement suite for $2,000 a month, and we really wanted to get into a place that we could own because renting is a fragile position. I think it can
Mhm.
work if you are single or if you're married, but as soon as you introduce kids into the picture,
Mhm.
you want to, if at all possible, have a level of stability in their
Yes.
lives. And that's really important to make sure that they have that safety. So we had been kicked out of our previous rental, not because of anything we did. And just in case there's someone in America listening, something I recently learned is that eviction means different things in America versus Canada.
Yes.
So in Canada, you can be evicted by your landlord not because you have failed to pay or anything, but just because they want to move their own family into the suite, for
Got
instance.
it.
Whereas
Yes.
in America, the term eviction, apparently, at least in certain jurisdictions, means that you have defaulted or not paid
100%.
your dues and you're
Yes.
getting evicted. So I was telling someone this recently who was from America, and they're like, "What? You're evicted?" And so in Canada, yes, but not in the American sense. In any case, that's a bit of a rabbit trail, but we were kicked out because they wanted to rent to family, and that just really sucked. And so
Yes.
we wanted to get our own house, and here we can do that. So we bought a house for 420,000. My
Wow.
parents moved with us. They're living in the basement suite, and so we pay even less than what you would normally pay for that
Mhm.
house. And also, it was just a good strategic move for them because they were in a small town, away from family, getting older. Hospital there would close on certain days in the week, so it's like make sure you plan your emergency.
Oh,
And
yes, for
here
sure.
they're in a proper city, so it's a win-win.
That's fantastic. So, how long ago did you start your Augusta location, and how did you transition each year, revenue wise? And where were you when you were able to get a GM and feel like it was stable enough to move on?
So I had a lawn care business for a year and a half. It was grossing 128,000. Joined Augusta, spent about 30K on marketing in year one. I think that was 2022, and we got up to 280,000 in gross revenue. Hardly any profit, as you would imagine, with growing that much. Next year, we didn't spend as much on marketing, maybe like 10 to 15K, and basically just stayed the same size, 294, so barely a difference, but profits non-existent still. And so going into that third year, I really wanted to make it more profitable because the pain of running the business versus the
Mhm.
pleasure of actually the rewards that you would receive wasn't very much. And so
Mhm.
I was at a place where I just said, even if all my clients leave me, I'm going to raise prices. And so we raised prices, and we didn't spend very much on marketing, but we grew. So maybe like 10K on marketing, but we grew to 300 and like 70,000 roughly there. But we
Fantastic.
profited $108,000 last
Awesome.
year. So way more profits. And in that year, midway around September, brought on a manager to run the infield operations. But one thing that's different is that it was someone who wasn't very strong on the technical side with software. And
Mm-hmm.
so she's fantastic at running the crews and doing the work in the field and has a background in gardening and horticulture. And honestly, one of those like strongest workers I've ever seen. And when I had her out last winter to help on a property cleanup at a huge property, maybe it's 2 winters ago, no breaks throughout the day, didn't want to stop to eat food. It was
Wow.
amazing. And she's like a 55-year-old woman. And so it's
Incredible.
incredible the kind of people that you can find. And so I do a lot of the office work still. So I don't answer the incoming calls because Command Center will do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do respond back to clients. I route the jobs for the day, invoice, sales, marketing, etc. But I enjoy all that stuff. I think naturally I'm more wired for administrative work. So all that's good for me.
Wow. This is an unusual story for sure. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of owners ask, how has it been for you to be an absentee owner? That's a fear that a lot of them have. Some actually open a business just so they can be an absentee owner and get a GM in there. So is she the only one you've had?
Yeah. This is the first GM I've had, and so far so good. And it's been fortunate that there hasn't been any major hurdles. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I do live 1,000 miles away from the
Mm-hmm.
location, so there's no way for me to go there on a regular basis. I do Loom videos occasionally,
Mm-hmm.
like on a monthly basis, just
Mm-hmm.
to go over the financials of the corporation and make sure we're on the same page. We have weekly meetings where we go over KPIs that we're tracking
Mm-hmm.
and just make sure we're marching in the same direction. But yeah, generally she's handling everything in the
Mm-hmm.
field and I don't have eyes on that.
And do you have employees as well that work under her?
Yeah. So there's 2 guys that were with us last year that are both coming back, and then we'll probably hire another 2. So there'll be 5 total in the field, and then we're hoping to grow up to 500,000. And we're spending roughly like 30,000 on marketing this year,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just sort of on the fence right now how much of that is going to be allocated to digital versus print.
Yeah. So some would ask, what did you do for that 30,000? What's your plan?
Yeah, for the marketing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We are looking at doing postcards because you can get a piece to the door print cost and material cost for 20 cents with
Wow.
Canada Post. So that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's just how effective that is
Mm-hmm.
versus doing stuff on Facebook or on Google. So we're weighing that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we're kind of like 50-50 on the allocation. But you did ask like how I set it up to be
Yes.
run remotely.
Yes.
And I think just to loop back to that for a second, one of the things that's different about our location is we do use vans, and the vans go home with employees. And so it's a very light operation from that
Mm-hmm.
perspective
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have a big shop space or anything. We just have a storage locker that we rent. And up until this year, we've been running out of like I think it's like 8 feet by 10 feet storage locker. So it's a teeny tiny little closet essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're upgrading to like a full one. I think it's like
Woohoo.
8 feet by 20 feet or something. So that's our big investment for this year. But basically the vans are like miniature sheds on wheels.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I conceptualize them. And the employees have by and large all the tools they need to complete any job. And then there's some occasional tools or supplies at the storage locker.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have seen where you lived in that area, and a lot of people would ask you, why in the world would you have vans? So you can tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is it's super expensive for any real estate. So I don't know if I mentioned it prior, but we moved because we would need
Mm-hmm.
to buy a house for like, I don't know, 1.5 million
Mm-hmm.
probably. And so it's hard to find land. It's just a very urban area with tons of people wanting to live there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the least affordable areas in the world. And maybe not in the absolute terms of the real estate value, but if you compare the average earnings of
Mm-hmm.
families in Vancouver to the price of real estate, it may be actually the winner for the most unaffordable place to live, which is not a contest you want to be first in.
Yeah. So on the streets there, I remember that whole area. There's just no place to park. And to have a mowing trailer and a truck is almost impossible to find a place to
Right.
park. So is that why you chose to have vans?
Yeah. That's another aspect. Like, one is I wanted the vehicles to go home with employees
Hmm.
because real estate values are so high that to be able to rent
Yes.
something would be very difficult. So there's a roadblock there. But
Hmm.
then you're right. In terms of parking and just getting the equipment out of the vehicle, a van is very convenient because the way
Hmm.
we have them set up is the sliding door has a ramp behind it. So
Got
you
it.
can parallel park and then you can open the sliding door and then the ramp comes out the side. So you don't need this extra real estate at the back of
Hmm.
the vehicle or whatever. Say with like a ramp rack truck, you
Yeah,
actually need quite a bit of
you
clearance, like
do.
get that ramp
Yes.
down and then get the mower out. So this ramp comes right onto the lawn of the client's property and you don't have to worry about that.
So they're the full size vans. They're not minivans. And do you have them specially made?
Sort of like in between, in the sense that you can get like an outfitter to put
Right.
in a partition between the drivers and the bed of the van, and
Hmm.
then they can install a ramp on the side. It's not like custom fabrication or anything.
Hmm.
They order these from a manufacturer and install them. But then, in terms of the interior, my father-in-law and I have just put up plywood with hooks, and then the equipment will rest on those. And we've sort of played around with it over time. And the bigger vans are easier to outfit.
Hmm.
We've done small ones, like they use these Ford Transit Connects for the
Hmm.
postal workers
Hmm.
here, and they're pretty small. And we made them
Yes,
work, and
I
I had three
remember.
of them at one point. But they're like not very nice for two-man crews. They are too squishy, and also
Yes.
they're sort of a pain to work on because they're just really confined, and you have to do all these weird angles with the
Hmm.
plywood. So
And do you bag clippings?
yeah, we bag for the majority, but then each property, yeah, okay. So this is another thing that is specific to our market, and I think a lot of metros, at least in
Hmm.
Canada, I don't know about in the States, but
Hmm.
here the municipal government will pick up the green waste,
Okay.
and
Okay.
so we're able to dump the clippings into that on a regular basis. And it's just with the property cleanups that we'll get these tarps and we'll haul the stuff off to the local dump, but
Hmm.
otherwise all the green waste is on the client's property.
So do you put any of that debris in the van, or when you do property cleanups, do you rent a trailer?
No, it goes in the van, and I've hauled a lot in those vans. I've hauled like over a literal ton of debris to the dump
Hmm.
and got rid of it. So they work pretty well. And if you think about it, I think it might be easier than in a pickup truck because a pickup truck doesn't have walls in the
True.
back usually.
Yes.
And with a van, you can actually stack up like against the walls. And if you have
Hmm.
a high top van, you've got quite a bit of space to stack the debris.
Well, you've got a lot of brains turning now, wondering how they could do this for sure. So I just saw you last week, and I was so excited to be with you and to see you again. And typically, once somebody has come up here to Washington State in our little studio and had their training, we don't see them again. They go back and they start their location. But it's been a few years, and you're back here. So can you tell me why I saw you last week?
Yeah, well, I've got the honor and opportunity to be a coach with the franchise this year. So we're doing some training for that, which is, I think, pretty unique for franchises. I was speaking to a marketing guy that I'm working with this year, and he used to be part of a franchise with this pizza business. And he was like, wow, it's some franchise that they're actually doing training for you. So pretty cool that that exists within Augusta.
Hmm.
It's a great opportunity just to catch up with some people like yourself.
Yeah.
And then there was new owner training after that. And so I'm not a new owner, but it's always nice to participate in that for a second time, at least some of it,
Hmm.
and see how far you've come, but also be able to ask some questions once the basics are in place. So it was, again, just a nice opportunity to revisit the basics and then ask some further questions.
Mhm. We're right around 180 locations right now. So tell me how many people there are in the coaching program and how that works, and why would we need coaches that were owners in the franchise?
Yeah. So I think there's 9 coaches. I could be wrong on that exact
I think
number,
that's about it.
but it's just I mean, it's a win-win in the sense that if you're a coach, you get the opportunity to interact with a lot of different businesses on a regular basis, and that's very valuable because like I think when you're running your own business, you're using a certain amount of your energy to just run it, and then you've only got a little bit of it left over to actually do the analysis of the
Hmm.
business.
True.
And I think that's why when you see someone else, and this is true just on a personal level as well, like we're often blind to the ways that we can improve because we're just spending so much of our energy doing the things that we do.
Yep.
But then when you see someone else sometimes it's really easy to see what needs to change in their lives or in their
Hmm.
business.
Yes.
And so that's the advantage of being a coach, is you see these problems or advantages that other people have, and then it gives you an opportunity to implement those in your own business, but also just to gain the skills of recognizing those patterns. So, and that's super valuable long term, because there's lots of businesses around. They're not going to be completely different than what is going on in Augusta, and so anyone that's a coach, I think, develops skills that will serve them long term in terms of their business journey. But also for the franchisees or the other franchisees that are like receiving the coaching, it's very valuable because they are using so much of their energy running the business that they do sometimes need a second set of eyes. But not just that, it's someone that is within the systems, that's running another location in the same service industry as them. So I think it's more specific than, say, a general business coach.
Hmm.
So I think that would be the general idea of the advantages.
Yeah. And so you put your name forward as somebody who would be willing to do the coaching. And it's a position that doesn't get paid. And it's just your expertise that we're looking for. And what do you think it was about you that caused us to choose you?
Oh, good question. This is the part about knowing thyself, which is difficult. But I would
Yes.
say I do have a background in pastoral work. I was never like a full time pastor, but I did multiple pastoral internships and I had training in that area. So I like people. I like giving counsel and not just looking at the business, but actually considering the whole person. So I'd say
Yes.
that that could be an advantage.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think there are any other Canadian coaches, so we don't have a ton of Canadian locations, but that would be something that could be beneficial to some people that are operating in Canada, just because there's different legal structures here, for instance, and ways of doing business. Uh,
Hmm.
Usually not as strong economically as the States, sadly, but
Yes.
maybe we'll change that.
Yes.
And uh, other than that, I generally like analysis, so I can get
Yes.
lost in that side too
Hmm.
much, but I do like creating spreadsheets and sharing information. And on the Facebook group within Augusta, I do often post things that I'm learning, and I've tried to take a stance of just being as open as possible, because I again do believe that uh, you receive by giving, both in like a spiritual sense. Actually, there's lots of
Yes.
sayings about that, but also just in a very practical day-to-day sense. You, I think, grow the most not by like hoarding your knowledge to yourself, but by sharing that, because then you continue to level up as you go along.
Yeah. So you are a person of a lot of character, and yes, you have the skills to minister to people, and we do know that you're good with people. You can consider the whole person, and when somebody's just sitting there talking about business, that doesn't always mean that that is the bottleneck in their business. Sometimes it could be emotional, mental health, family, relationship stuff. But beyond that, you've always had a lot of questions from the very beginning. You wanted to know every angle of everything, and then once you knew, you followed all the steps and followed the systems, and you've just steadily grown and not had to fall way backwards or anything. It's just been steady growth, and so many people can learn from that. And another reason is we tried to choose people that were in all different stages of growing a business, and your experience is a lot different than most because of the area that your business is in, the fact that you do everything in a van, which is, unheard of in most places. It's just people would never think that that would be possible, but hey, we do what we got to do. Mike had a little van that he put a lawnmower in the back of, and that went through multiple families, but you do what you got to do, and it's worked out well for you. And then the fact that you actually moved away and are doing something else, but you have a full business that you built that is running without you. So you're a person that is definitely qualified to give counsel to other owners, and so we really appreciate having you. But I saw you before that not too long ago, and it was at our Blue Collar Summit. So what was that experience like for you?
Well, thanks for the kind words, first of all. I'd say with Blue Collar Summit that I was there for the franchise portion this
Okay.
year. And I would say, what was it like for me? The best things happened in between the speaking, in my opinion. I used to be of the opinion, like when I was going through school, I used to be of the opinion that, you could just watch the lectures online at 2 times speed and you get everything you
Yes.
need out of it.
Yeah.
And you get maybe the lecture stuff,
Hmm.
but there's all the other intangibles that you don't get with that. And so I think it's really valuable to go to a conference, to meet other people that are in the same service industry, to have these relationships begin to emerge. And
Hmm.
um, what I value of it is just getting in the same room as other business owners who are entrepreneurial. You, I don't know if this has been your experience. I'd be curious to hear, but there's a different culture or sort of spirit or ethos that's in those sorts of meetings
Hmm.
than in average interactions that you have with other people. And
Hmm.
this isn't necessarily a knock against other people, but you really see how different the mindset is of, say, business owners, of like, I like to think of them as hopelessly optimistic problem solvers.
Yes.
And that's such a nice place to inhabit. And then
Yes.
you go to your quote unquote regular life and you have quote unquote regular conversations. And sometimes you think, you know, you guys don't need to look at it this way. Like
Hmm.
there's a more beneficial way that you could think about these
Hmm.
problems and solve them. And you're putting yourself under undue stress because you're not framing it in the right way. So
Hmm.
I think that that culture is contagious and it's important to be a part of it. And um, that's something, another saying that I'm ripping off, I haven't coined this by any means, but it's caught rather than taught.
Yes.
So you have to be around these people. And actually, mindsets, I think they are contagious. And so
Hmm.
you have to be careful on the
Yes.
negative side. You have to be
Totally.
careful about who you're associating with yourself, because you can start to look at the world in that way and believe in unhelpful paradigms. But on the other hand, if you know that there are good people out there that are running their businesses and they're growing year to year and they're facing their problems and taking full responsibility for their lives, that's a great group of people to be around. And
Hmm.
so I'd say that that's on offer at some place like Blue Collar Summit.
Yeah, and to be there with people that you know are all hard workers, because there's no way you could do what we all do unless you were definitely of that same caliber.
Yeah. And I think about that too sometimes. Something I've been thinking about recently is like sometimes like the 40-hour work week will be criticized and people will say, well, it's just a construct. Like we don't actually need that. It's just something that people invented and
Hmm.
it's not accurate. And I would say, yeah, it probably isn't accurate. You probably need to put more. Like you probably need to
Yes.
put 60 hours in if you want to
Yes.
accomplish something meaningful. And 40 hours is sort of like a starting point.
Hmm.
But ask anyone that's really done something with their lives, and it does generally require that. And you can be disciplined about it, and you don't need to be like crazy and neglect everything in your life so that it all falls apart. But I think that it's good to have realistic expectations and just to say, on average, yeah, let's try to put 60 hours in a week for 5 or 10 years and see what happens.
100%. It works and it makes a big difference. At the Blue Collar Summit, for those who weren't there, what was the format? Were there lots of speakers? Were there extracurricular things? Were there breakout sessions?
Yeah. So um, they, as far as I know, had like quite short speaking engagements, and
Hmm.
so it kept it quite fresh. It's different than some other conferences where you'd have a lecture that would go on for a long time. Although I know that Mike did an extended sort of
Hmm.
workshop, which
Hmm.
was pretty in depth, but they would cycle through the speakers pretty efficiently so that people's attention was engaged the whole time, which I thought was great. And I know that
Hmm.
that's been the case for a couple conferences at least. And uh, there were also some breakout sessions or like workshops in the morning. I know there were some Augusta locations that or owners that were leading things in the mornings as
Hmm.
sort of optional extras. So I think there's a bit of choose your own adventure that was
Yes,
included in it.
yes, yes, that was awesome. Yeah, we actually listen to everyone and we do a survey every year. And so whatever people share that they would like to have, we really try to incorporate that into the next year. And people wanted a lot of physical activity, so we made sure there was a run and a cold water plunge, and all of those were a huge hit this year. And we did some golfing with the franchisees as well. So it was really special. But somebody might say, you seem pretty smart, you seem like a great guy with people. You seem like you could run a business well. Why would you need Augusta?
Well, I mean, I didn't have a background in business. And so I had started this lawn care company. And then Augusta came on the radar because I'd listened through Jonathan Potoshnik's material. And then I started listening to Mike Andy's material. And I thought, it makes a lot of sense to get around other people that have that positive entrepreneurial spirit, that are working in the home services industry. And I do think that synergy exists, like with
Hmm.
business and other endeavors. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And so you can
Yes.
think of it as like 1 + 1 = 3, that you get a lot more out of working with another person than just if you like had two of yourself or something. And that is why I joined Augusta. So I want to learn, I want to grow as a person. I personally, and there's different people in Augusta. And so there's going to be some people that they're in Augusta and that is all they want to do for the rest of their lives, and more
Hmm.
power to them. And they
Hmm.
want to start lots of locations. That's fantastic. Um, I'm not of that persuasion. I'm more of the persuasion that I'm going to hold on to my location long term. I'm going to associate with these people. I'm going to continue to grow alongside them because it's a wonderful uh, a community that educates me. It's like a mastermind that I'm part of. And you can
Hmm.
think of the franchise fees in that way. It's like lots of
Yes.
people spend $30,000 a year for a
No
mastermind group.
kidding.
And
Yes.
so if you're spending 1,200 or 1,500 or whatever the franchise fee is today per month, like you're getting a bunch of value aside from that. But just
Hmm.
think of it as, okay, I'm going to be enrolled in this school of business. What is the school? I'm going to be around actual other business owners that are making decisions constantly, and this is how I'm going to change and grow as a person. And then for myself, I can do other stuff. Like I can start another home services business in a different field, and I can take a
Yeah.
lot of what I'm learning in Augusta and apply it there. And so I don't think there's any reason that someone in Augusta can't continue to do other stuff. It might not be in lawn care, but there's so many
Hmm.
applicable lessons that can carry forward. And so that's why I joined. That's why I want to continue in it. And I do see it as very valuable for that reason.
In hindsight, would you do it again? And when you came for training last week, was it a lot different than when you came the first time?
Yeah, I'd do it again. And would I, or was it a lot different? I think that, it's fun thinking back to the first time,
Hmm.
because it was an exciting time
It
in the
was.
franchise's journey. And I just
Yes.
remember this electric energy
It
from
was.
Mike when he was at the front teaching, and
Yes.
this particular look in his eyes when he was very engaged with certain
Yes.
questions. And so I'd say now it is more structured to a certain degree, although it's quite structured when I came through. It wasn't like helter
Hmm.
skelter, but there was a lot more involvement from other people in the franchise with this newer training. So I think
Hmm.
before there was more that was just on Mike's plate.
Yeah.
And I think there was sort of a special degree of electric energy that was at this first training
Oh,
event or at
totally.
these first ones.
Yes.
And Mike is still very good at teaching. Obviously,
Hmm.
it's a little more mellow, and I think that that's
Hmm.
probably good for the sustainability of the
Yes.
franchise going
Yes.
forward. And I think it probably speaks to him being just at a different point in life, where he's about to get married, and things
Hmm.
are sort of more even keel, from what I can tell. I mean,
Yeah.
you're there daily,
Yeah.
so you'd know better. But yeah, largely similar in terms of the structure of the different stages that
Hmm.
franchisee will go through, which I think is testament to it being accurate. Like they didn't have to do this massive revision of the different stages of
Hmm.
growth.
Right.
There's, I think, more emphasis on getting to about 800,000 and
Hmm.
becoming profitable at that stage. But yeah, that overall, how can I summarize this in a succinct way? I would say that it's quite similar. The first ones were unique in their
Hmm.
energy, and now I think it's more um, inclusive. I
Yeah.
hate the
More
word inclusive.
robust, maybe.
Yeah, it's bringing in more people
Yeah.
that are part of the franchise and giving their perspective as well. So like Lee and Nick are more involved with the teaching at this point.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just gotta happen that way over time. It just he can only do so much, so he needs the rest of us to take a little bit for him. So as we get to the point where we're gonna wrap up a little bit today, can you really tell us kind of what you've been listening to, feeding on, kind of what makes you the person you are, and what would you give advice to somebody that was just starting out?
All right, all right. Yeah, I will definitely give advice, because I used to ask my teachers, "Can you give me advice on this?" And then they'd say, "Oh, I don't want to give advice." And I think, yeah,
Totally.
that's just like why don't you just give me advice? I don't know if they had bad experience with advice or something, but as long as you couch it in the right terms, I think it's fine. So
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and you're looking for advice, I'll give you some. Things that I found helpful recently that I'm kind of setting my aim on is in terms of like physical health, like eating properly, sleeping properly, exercising. And so it's going to be different depending on who you are. But
Mhm,
I think it's important to get 8 hours of sleep. Some tricks for that is to stop looking at screens an
mhm,
hour before bed,
mhm.
stop eating or drinking 2 hours before bed. Made a world of difference in my life.
Yep.
Also, like any noise canceling things you can have in your room, like even just earplugs or something, can really help. So that's sleep. Exercise, 30 minutes of cardio a day, I
Mhm.
think is achievable for a lot of people. That
Yep.
really puts you on a trajectory to success. Um, what you do on a daily basis is so important, and it's easy to let these things go. And I think the sort of pattern that I see in other people around me and including myself is when you're young, you're sort of naturally fit in a way. It just
Mhm,
comes easy. And then you
mhm.
think it's going to continue indefinitely, but you don't develop the habit of healthiness in your
Right.
life. And
It's
then you're
true.
surprised to wake up one day and you're like, oh, what happened?
For
I wish
sure.
that I was a different way.
Yep.
And then that comes back to choosing what kind of difficulty you want in your life, because life is difficult regardless. There's no way around it. And you can
Yep.
choose to have the difficulty of working hard on yourself, but having the benefits of that later on. Or you can have the difficulty of maybe not doing the sacrifices that are necessary in the immediate.
Mhm,
And the difficulty then isn't front loaded, it's later, and it's worse because then you have to pay the piper at some point. So it's like
mhm.
pain is inevitable. You can choose it now or later, and generally it's preferable to choose pain now. So um, working out is good, cardio, and then what was the other one? Sleeping and eating and
Exercising. Oh, you
exercise.
did the
Yeah,
cardio.
yeah, eating. I
Sleep.
didn't talk about the eating. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, with the eating, I think it's good to just look at a book like Max Lugavere, Genius Foods, I think that's what it's
Mhm,
called.
mhm,
But it is talking about eating whole foods and having vitamin D and having fish oil. And there's things that you can do in your diet on a daily basis that are really helpful. So I'm just listing these things because they have been really beneficial for me.
mhm.
Praying regularly in the morning has been helpful for me. So generally, when I wake up, the first thing I do is I go pray for 10 minutes. And I'm an Orthodox Christian, and so like we have icons like images of Christ and the saints, and we have set prayers that we go through. And again, it's just like a habit, and you don't necessarily have to
Mhm.
feel it. It's just you do it regardless because you trust that by doing these things, you're going to change who you are.
Right.
And I think this is really strong in Orthodox Christianity, that a way to think about it is like you aim your heart with your body, like you do things physically to change actually your consciousness and what you're thinking is important in your life. And I think that makes perfect sense with
Totally.
business and everything else,
Mhm,
that you just have to do it in your life, and that's going to change how you feel over time. And it's great advice for marriage. I think I heard this as well, that like love is an action primarily
mhm,
and an emotion secondarily. And
mhm.
so the more you act in a loving way, the more your emotions will follow along with that. And so if you aren't feeling loving feelings in your marriage, so long as it's a healthy marriage, the way to address that is to perform loving actions, and
Yes.
that's how you can overcome it. So um, so these things have been helpful for me. um, is that kind of
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And if you were having somebody that was just starting out in their business, what could you say to encourage them?
oh yeah, just keep going, just keep going. It's like an instrument. I think the more time you put in, the better you'll get. It's unreasonable to expect that you'll be just an amazing performer right from the beginning. I know
Mhm,
that I've struggled with that sometimes, where it's like, well, I'm proficient in these other areas of life. I feel like I'm a mature adult. Why aren't I better at business? And the reality is, if you started playing piano today, would you be very good? No.
nope,
But can you get better? Yes. And what are
100%.
the steps to get better? It's just putting in time on a
Yes.
consistent basis with someone who actually knows what the um, structure is. Like you don't actually get better at an instrument by just doing whatever.
Mhm,
You become better by doing set disciplines and routines over a period of time, so that you can develop the proficiency to then improvise. And so I think that that's the same with business, that there are certain systems that you can fall within. I think Augusta offers that. It's like there's lots of ways that you can structure a lawn care company. Is this the only way that things could be done? No. But does it work generally speaking? Yes. And so why not just try this for a while, learn how to do it, and then you'll become more proficient over time, and you'll be able to look back in maybe 5 years and say, wow, I've really grown as a person. But the main thing is to stick with it, to not beat yourself up, and to trust that you will become the sort of person that you're intending to be if you put in the time now, and to not become discouraged along the way.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. So, do you have a quote for us?
Oh, a quote. A rip off of Mike Gandy's quote. Well,
Sure,
progress over
sure.
perfection.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I will let you go, and I cannot thank you enough for your time today. I know that you're really busy, and I was so happy to see you last week. And after I saw you, I thought, oh, we have to get him on again because it's been a long time, and there's been a lot of changes in his life and in his business.
Well, thank you, Liz. It's an honor speaking with you. And I do want to say at this point, thank you so much for what you're doing with the franchise. And I really respect all that you're providing.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye.